All right. It appears we're live. Let me check in with LinkedIn to see if everything is good. But I think we can get started and introducing ourselves. My name is Joaquin Milata, and I am founder of the Swarm community. Um, with us today is our guest, Tech Raj Chetri, and you're a postdoc research fellow in
Southampton University. Yeah.
Southampton University. Yes. Can you tell us a little bit more about your diverse research interests and backgrounds?
Yeah, sure. As you said, I'm currently a research fellow at the University of Southampton, and I'm also a founder of Care Nepal, a research artificial intelligence research center in Nepal, where we do research on artificial intelligence, mostly focusing on responsible AI. Speaking of my background, I started working as a software engineer or a developer as usual after finishing my undergraduate studies. Moving on, then I worked in the healthcare domain again as a programmer. And then I started my master's studies where I work in two different research labs. One in the cloud computing, where I was working on data pipeline and cloud failure predictions, research on the failure predictions. While at the same time, I was also working on autonomous vehicle, in that research area, mostly working on SLAM, which means like simultaneous localization and mapping. In- And at the end of my master's studies, I went into industry again in the self-driving industry for about 6 months, and then I joined my PhD where I was doing all those knowledge graphs, privacy technologies, and here I am now after finishing my PhD, working as a research fellow or the postdoc at the University of Southampton, again developing some privacy technologies.
I'd like to learn more about how your experience with software and infrastructure development shaped your views around the research that you did in your in your PhD. Um, did that have any
Oh,
influence?
uh, yes, at least to me, I cannot relate it to all because everybody has their own individual experience. But for me, yes, it helped me a lot, and not just the development experience, the experience from the software developer, but also from other diverse domain. Because that helped me see my own research from the different perspective, and it helped me in a positive way. Okay, like I was doing cloud computing, right? And then when you talk about the cloud computing, you automatically thinks about, okay, how do we handle the scaling? Because if you don't take care of the scaling, for example, in uh, Amazon, if you leave your instance running and somebody is accessing, and if you left it for auto scaling, I mean, uh, then you get charged, like even if you are not using. So those kinds of things. Then when I was developing all those privacy related technologies, then I was also thinking from the perspective of scaling, and those are the things that comes from the distributed systems, those background. And that's very practical, because if you see any technology that you are developing or any industry, they want to use it, bring it to the market, you want to see to how many people you want to reach. That means your software system or any other technology should be able to handle all those large scale requests. And yeah, that's how it helped me. So seeing from different perspective and applying it.
And with Slam, what kind of I know it was in a very targeted technology area that you were developing your skill sets and doing
Mhm,
research, but how did you what learnings did you come out of that with those advanced hardware and software integrated systems?
mhm. I was mostly working on algorithm side, so it helped me, all those problem solving abilities that I developed there. it was a transferable skill, so it doesn't it helped me during my PhD, where I was supposed to solve problem, come up with the problem. So all those debugging skills and very looking things with very detailed attention helped me during my PhD.
And now that you're done with your PhD and you're in doing research, advanced research, can you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you're researching? You mentioned something about open source.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm working on a project named Opcast, uh, where the project aims to develop privacy-related technology, mostly supporting like how do you ensure that the data that's being shared is like privacy regulatory compliant. Not just that, even uh, if it's not like regulatory compliant, sometimes user also want to specify their own set of like constraint. Like you if we take the example of data marketplace where you want to sell your data, you may want to say, okay, I want to sell my data with some condition. So how do you enforce that type of condition? But then you may also want to go into the negotiation phase. Like, okay, you may say, okay, I'll offer some more price if you allow me to do some X action. Then I may say, okay, that's fine for me as long as you do this. And I may be willing to remove some conditions. So this is the kind of technology that we are building. So I am responsible. If I have to say from my point of view, what I'm actually working on this thing, I'm working on the privacy component. So I'm responsible for developing all those privacy related technologies that helps to enforce set of conditions, user conditions over the data controller or whoever is buying the data, or when you share the data in an yeah, semi-automated fashion.
So, if I understand correctly, you have this tooling, this platform that you're
Mhm,
developing that's open
mhm,
source that is meant to allow people to kind of broker their information through and strip out
mhm,
their personal information, but be able to share or sell their own data and even enter into a marketplace where they can negotiate with people that want to purchase that kind of data.
mhm. Yeah, the idea of this project is to have everything like as a plugin so that you can plug and play, integrate with all the marketplace. Uh, and then everyone, since it's part of the research, and then research in the research, we always want to make sure that everyone is reusing our work. So most of the things will get open source because there are some industrial partners, they are doing their own parts, so that thing probably will not be open source. But we as a University of Southampton and other academic uh, partners who are involved in this project, all of their work will be open source, most likely. At least I can say for mine, the thing that I'm doing and that we are doing at the University of Southampton will be open source.
Who might be, I mean, this seems incredibly useful and timely in a time where anybody takes your data with or without your permission for people to have some sort of buffer to
Mhm.
protect themselves. But who do you think would be most suitable for using this kind of open source technology?
I would say the industries, obviously anyone who is dealing with data. I most particularly who every industry wants to reuse data from different organization, be it different organization or person. So most beneficial will be industry, also the user, because they will also be informed about their data itself, like how is someone using their data, and they can also potentially get benefit of from their own data and be more conscious about the privacy. So it's not just this technology. My book, based on my PhD work, is also coming out, which is also about privacy work that I did, and also the explainable AI and how knowledge graphs can help. So that will be coming out soon in 2024, sometime in 2024. So That should also be beneficial.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're weaving in IoT, data
Mhm,
privacy, and knowledge graphs within the idea of this platform you're building, to sort of paint a picture as to how this works together?
mhm. So let me give you a simple example. Mm, you have a car, right? And I am an insurance company. Now, you come to me and you said, okay, I want to have insurance. I say, yeah, that's great. But then I may say, okay, I want to use your vehicle data so that I can understand how good you are driving, and based on that, I may be able to give you a discount mm, on your insurance, depending on like your I don't know how you drive or whatever reason. Most likely you will opt in because on the longer run, I'll be giving you more discount. That means you have to pay less insurance money. Now, uh, this point is fine, but the data that I'm using is your personal data. That's directly linked to you. I can identify your all this behavioral information that of course, having benefit from the data. But then it also poses the risk. Like, what if the data is misused? What if I used it in the wrongful way? Because you don't have control once I have the data, right? So how is it that someone can have control over the data? So
Mm.
that is where this regulatory compliance comes into play, like laws like GDPR. So they make sure that I obtain the permission, of course, which I do. Apart from obtaining condition, uh, I should also have to demonstrate that I did what I said I will do, and that's where my work comes into play. So my work, if you see between us, like the you as a insurer and me as an insurance company, sits in the middle, and then it acts as a intermediary, so that everything that I want to obtain the permission from you, it goes through this, and it keeps log of all those information and make sure that nothing extra is obtained from you. For example, if I say I want to obtain your information, like get the permission for research, it has to be just research. And I also keep logs of like what I'm doing continuously, so that it can be later used when to the authority whenever they ask for the demonstration of compliance, saying that okay, I did this. Uh, now my the work that I did takes this uh, centralized no uh, like decentralized approach, a distributed approach, meaning that I do not take control over all the data. I just act as a mediary, making all those, uh, let's say, contract in a non-formal way, so that I do all those legal things. Rest, the data transfer happens between you and me directly. If you want to do the managed approach, then or the centralized one, then it's the same technology, but the data flow again happens through me. That's even more it's much more better. But then there's again like more complications. Do you want to handle this? But the technology that has been developed can do that thing as well, with a little tweak.
We have a question, but
Mhm,
before we get to that question, I'd love to just rephrase my understanding. So the work that you're doing with the platform and open source tooling you're creating,
mhm.
it's
One
meant
of
to
the just sorry to interrupt. One of the work that I did is already open source, so people can go into GitHub, and my GitHub account, Tekrat Setre, even it's available in my website, and you can already use that.
Okay, we can share that after the call.
Mhm,
So the work that you're doing with the platforms that you have created and are
mhm,
creating as an open source mechanism to sort of act as a broker of data.
mhm,
Um, right now, it doesn't sit anywhere. It needs to be implemented. right now, since the birth of the internet and where we stand today, we've given our data
Yeah.
to these companies, and we have to blindly trust because we can't verify or know exactly what or how they use our information. And there's data leaks all over the place. Every week, every month, you see that there's leaks of data. How would this be implemented? And then I will share a question that we received.
Mhm. I think this kind of question will be always there unless you install all those trusted parties, so that everything the other person, like other companies, are doing is using some trusted software. Unless that's done, this question always arrives, and it cannot be solved with the way that we are doing. This will always be there, and w- we can do that if we can build all those trusted software so that people install that, and then everything, it takes control. But then the problem there is like, why aren't the companies doing that? Because not everyone wants to install all those kinds of software. So there has to be some sort of trust mechanism you have to trust. Now, before, there was no consequences. uh, there was, but not like now. Now with the law coming in, saying, okay, if you don't prove what you are saying you did, you want to do, you are liable. So that is somehow, I would say, balancing. But those kinds of trust issue will be always, unless you have these trusted parties installed in your system, or like any other companies.
So, Sudhansu Ray is asking how do we regulate this data when companies have our personal information like Facebook, YouTube, X? They still sell our information or use it. I mean, I imagine some of that is in the terms of condition for using a platform,
Mhm.
but you know, how would you're saying what you're saying is we need some sort of support from government or third party institutions that represent people
Mhm.
to kind of enforce these mechanisms to be implemented or integrated into these platforms so we can regulate our own
Mhm.
use.
Yeah, so let me answer this question. When we say we regulate, that means we don't regulate by ourselves. It's the law that regulates things, first thing. I think to the certain extent, it's already enforced and is in place, but it's not fully there. There are some improvements to be done that I acknowledge. Now, having said that, uh, we have our personal data. The thing is, we acknowledge their privacy policy. We said, okay, we are fine with whatever things. Not sure how many people are reading those terms and conditions. We acknowledge all those conditions, and that's how they are using. Now, if you believe that they are using your data, which you said no, you did not acknowledge to their privacy policy or the conditions, then you can sue them. Like, and there has been multiple fines with in Europe, like Google, even Facebook. They are being fined for misusing the data, right? So yeah, to some extent, it's already there. The only thing is like, are they using your data without your consent? Did you agree or not? So that's the only thing.
Okay. I hope that answered your question.
Because yeah, just last point, because with GDPR, if you, even if my data is with some company, if I say, okay, i want to I want you to, if I say I want you to erase all my data, they have to remove all the data, and if they don't, they will be liable.
Hmm, okay. Um, so there's all these regulations that are being implemented in Europe, and some other countries are kind of coming behind them to implement guardrails into how we, use data, train AI, and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the regulations that are coming into the picture? and what their implications are in the data privacy ecosystem?
Mhm. Yeah, I think a couple of days back, I checked the website, like United Nations website, and about the data privacy. They can already specify how many countries in the world have like data privacy regulation, not like exactly like GDPR, but in some way they define the data protection mechanism, how one should use all the data and protect the privacy. So I think it was around approximately, if I'm not mistaken, 10 or 7 countries they did not have, or they could not identify that. The rest, they have things in place. That means it is not new, it has been there. Even GDPR, it's an improvement of the previous law. So they made it improvement, and then we have now GDPR. And there is also Chinese people's something law, and in US, for example, CCPA is there, Consumer Privacy California Consumer CCPA. I don't remember the acronym, but it's always there. So what has been done now with the increase in use of digital technology, and particularly IoT, more and more data are coming in, and then that's how people say, okay, now IoT is penetrating everyone, everywhere, like your home, hospital, and and then people realize the extent of personal data that's coming in, and that's how it's being regulated. Now what are the challenges, or what are the advantages and disadvantages of it? Okay, benefits, it's for us, it's there to protect our privacy, that's good. But then what does it mean to the industry? It means like they have to change the way how they are working, not just from the software implementation, but also behavior of the people, because change happen not just from the software. Because if I just implement a software and I do not use it the way it was designed, there's no meaning. Like we should also change our attitude. So most importantly, what's happening, industries are not a- fully able to uh, like automate things necessary to acknowledge all those regulatory compliance. And that means they will lose money if they cannot do things they need to do. uh, Two things, like one, they need to understand all those regulatory text, and then develop a software that's compliant by itself, and also will help to make your things compliant. So one, you need to be compliant by yourself, and it should enable the work that you are doing, it should enable that thing to be more compliant as well. And that's the challenge.
Before we get ahead, I'd like to go back and kind of condense the definition of IoT. And I think everything that you've been saying so far weaves a picture as to the purpose behind why you founded Care Nepal.
Mhm.
So perhaps we could start out by saying IoT stands for the Internet of Things, and it makes up all devices that are connected to the World Wide Web. So
Mhm.
your
Or
phone,
the
your
internet.
tablet,
Mhm.
the Alexa, your washing machine, if it's
A
connected
simple
to the
mobile phone, that's an example as well. And then it emits your location information and all other information that you have.
and all these things are tied to in some way or another a piece of information that can identify directly or indirectly who is using that device, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So as you said, there's sensors that kind of state your geolocation, but then there is data that you enter into a phone or a TV, a computer that registers that under a name, under a email.
Mhm.
You use any social platform, there is some sort of identifier that says, Tech Raj or Joaquin is logged into LinkedIn or Facebook.
Yeah, IP address, is one of the example. That's also considered personally identifiable because it can be linked to you. And GDPR or like says not just direct the information that can be directly linked to you, but also indirectly linked to you. If there's any such information, you need to treat those information as like personally identifiable, and the laws will be applicable. For example, let's say uh, accelerometer data, that's not personally identifiable data. But then if I'm using it with the application like uh, mobile application, that fitness application, to be specific, then it becomes personal data. Why? Because those non-identifiable information is now used together so that it can be linked to you or someone else. And that's then again, in this case, GDPR will be applied.
So this brings me to the quote that we have in the podcast that we're releasing tomorrow with you. Whether you like it or not, if you're on the internet, you're part of the IoT ecosystem. And you said in the recording in the podcast that we have coming out tomorrow that you were concerned that a lot of people do not know the impact, the far-reaching impact of how they interact with the internet, how they share their information, and that there are positive and negative consequences of that kind of behavior of
Mhm.
not knowing. That led you to found Care Nepal. So, do you want to talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. For example, we can take an example of the generative AI, which is very hot now. It's good. I mean, we can use that technology to do like to generate text. That's good. We can use it for education in a controlled way. But then the problem is also that sometimes it generates the text that doesn't make any sense. And if you are not expert, and sometimes it generates a text like it's very hard to identify if it's written by humans or not, but then containing the non-factual information or incorrect information. Now if you give those kinds of information to people who are not expert, even if it's difficult for experts to identify, and there are people like most of the people like who are general user, they are the normal user, right? And then they may see it as a they may go through the text, they may consider it as factual. uh, so it can be used to generate like all those fake news and the propaganda things. And then using the social media, you can reach large number of audience, and that brings the negative that's where the negative things comes into play. For example, it can be used to influence all those elections, for example, using the social media and the fake content that you now you can generate all those fake images, make fake videos like using the deep fake. And you can use it with the social, combined with the social power of the social media. You can influence almost everything, because most of us are the users. And how often we can ask ourselves how often we verify the information that we see on Twitter, Facebook, or any other social media.
I don't check citations for every comment I see on social media.
Yeah, so we can see the influence. Now if you deliberately uh, show similar information continuously, even if after a certain point of time you subconsciously uh, tend to align with those kinds of information, right? And that's very dangerous.
Propaganda. It's social
Mhm.
conditioning, right? I mean, you're
Yeah,
exposed to
yeah.
information. Um, so the internet kind of made the world smaller. You know, before you had to call people and over long distances, and there was physical infrastructure that sort of limited who you could talk to at what time. But the
Mhm.
internet, email addresses, social media, it really made it easy for us to talk to each other. And people are liars, you know. Sorry, some people are liars. Some people tell the truth, and some people say things without thinking about whether it's based on truth or not, or maybe something they've heard. But you're right. If we don't have a way to curb misinformation for people that may not be aware that things they're being seen, things that they're seeing are in fact lies or misconstrued truths, it shapes the way that society moves and behaves. I'm gonna open up the chat. You know, if you guys have any
Okay.
questions, feel free to chime in.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
I have taken notes of two names and some dates because I'm very bad with that. I think it's not just now, just with the when I say just now, with the booming of AI, that people are thinking about all those negative consequences of the computing technology. It goes back to 90s. Like for example, in 1943, Robert Wiener, like with him, mm, like he started laying out all those foundational principles for ethics, computer ethics and things. And in 1976, Walter Manor like officially coined the term computer ethics. So it's not just now. People have been thinking of the negative consequences any new technology, especially the computing one, could bring. And they were even in those early days were thinking, okay, we should now have all those ethical principles laid out so that everyone will follow. Now even in ACM, those are the ACM, IEEE, those are the organizations that most of the computing professional like are associated with it, and those are the major one. ACM, which also awards the Turing Award, which is called the Nobel Prize of Computer Science. So they also have laid out all those ethical principles, not just in research, but also for all the professionals to follow.
and I mean, it's only gotten more complicated as we've developed infrastructure and platforms and
Mhm,
hardware. The world is getting closer and closer with all these 5G and 6G and 8G
mhm,
and faster means of transporting data.
mhm.
Um, this must be a very important topic for you if you've dedicated your PhD career to pursue.
I think it's not just for me, but also for the world, because what I'm doing is data privacy, of course, which is important, but also I'm looking into other aspects like data quality. And with that being said, why I want to highlight a very important findings from one of the research for three-fourth of IoT projects fail because of the data quality issue. Those things that are shaping our daily lives, and there are projects that are failing. So of course there's a challenge of data privacy that's already there, but then there are other associated challenges, for example data quality, and how do you ensure the trust thing. uh, and it's interesting to me because, and also for other people, because not just me, every researcher, the little part they do is in some way is impacting other things. So it's nice to see those impacts and that you could make.
You so you mentioned that statistical analysis by McKinsey, and it's 12, you said 5.5 to 12 trillion dollars.
Mm.
Three-fourths of that is going to waste because of data quality issues. Um,
Yeah, that
that
that is the projection by McKinsey. I think it's for 2030 or 2050. I don't remember the exact date, but the economic impact that IoT will be making is between 5.5 to 12 trillion USD.
I
So you
mean,
can
even
see
if you,
economically how big the impact it can make. And if there's any failure of IoT project, that means some component of that 5 to 12 trillion is like getting wasted.
even if you look at it from 2024 to 2030,
Mhm,
at that scale of cash, you're burning slightly under $1 trillion a year to $2 trillion a year if you're
mhm,
not properly implementing these projects.
mhm.
So we have a question from Sudhansu one more time, and he's asking about artificial general intelligence and the notion that AI is gaining sentience, gaining consciousness day by day. Um, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. I think I don't need to answer what is AGI. You already mentioned artificial generative intelligence. Is AI getting conscious? In a way, it's I would say both yes and no. It's making progress, so in that sense, yes. But it in that sense, yes. But then I'd say no because like there's much more to be done. Just because we could generate all those text using ChatGPT and the progress it has been made there doesn't mean it's up to our level because just generating text is not part of just that is AI should we should not limit AI to just that ChatGPT and those domain. There is also like visual and it's also lacking common sense. There's been research ongoing in that domain. Uh, so yeah, it's yes and no from my side.
I'd like to say that we're still kind of in an infantile stage in development. I mean, devices or solutions like ChatGPT showcase what we're capable of doing with statistics, but
Mhm.
not real knowledge. Um, Intelligence is something a lot more abstract, and we have yet to fully understand how our own intelligence works or how the brain works. And technology is only but a shadow of what biology is. So I don't think we're anywhere close to that, but we're certainly making steps in little areas that will eventually amount and integrate into some sort of low level intelligence because the human brain is too amazing to be replicated in 10 years or 30 years.
Yeah, I think it's same like autonomous vehicle because when it was new and people saw sudden change and they many people projected like it will replace the driver by like some year and then still today we have not achieved that, right? So there's a lot more things to be done.
And the world is far more complicated because earlier when you mentioned I hope that answers your question, Sudhansu. But earlier when you mentioned that you were working on Slam,
Mhm.
um, that is one form of kind of being aware of what's around you, but there's been cases recently and even a couple years back where people are still getting hit by cars and that it can't properly detect children or women or old people or people dressed in different clothing or people of color. You know, there's so many limitations to the kind of training that we have for the devices that we have being prototyped today.
Mhm. Yeah, that brings me to the responsible AI part. I'd like to bring it in because what you said is the exact thing that responsible AI aims to address. All those things because you said it's not recognizing people of color. Why is it happening? It is happening because your AI model is not trained with the sufficient data with people of color. So it's one bias towards like whatever data you are trained with. For example, if I have data from certain socio-economic group and not from the other group, and if I deploy that AI system in the other socio-economic group, it will give the biased results. That is what happening, and that's where responsible AI comes into play. And it's not just about developing model and including different types of data, but also it's a collective action, not just from computer scientists but also from other domain because you need to understand the societal dimension and people with the social science background can help. And if you want to for example understand the psychological perspective, people from that domain can help. Collective action should be there to uh, building AI systems or AI models and also implementing and using it. Also over the time you also need to monitor it. So there's also the monitoring component because you for example you develop your models using all this data, let's assume, for until today. And what if the data changes? The pattern of the data changes over like from tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So there's a concept called data drift, and the concept drift in um, like machine learning, data drift is like when your data changes drastically than what your model is trained for. It will not take those things into account. So those are the things that you need to monitor, so that uh, the system that you are deploying using all those AI algorithms are responsible. And
There was another case
Mhm.
recently that they find and revoke the ability to implement computer vision in a pharmacy, in a major pharmacy in the United States, that they were tracking customers and they were flagging people of color and women as shoplifters.
Mhm.
Unprovoked behavior, just flagging them and calling the cops on them. So
Mhm.
it's such a vital thing to properly have a diverse representation of data for whatever application, even if it's a slice.
Mhm.
And you need to think on the edge cases of how you apply this to a variety of people, right? It's not just you and I are
Yeah.
in the room. We're designing a system. We still have to think about.
Yeah, it's even more important today, and it will be even like more important tomorrow, like in coming years, because even if we want or if we don't want, we'll be part of it knowingly or unknowingly. It's like people say like they don't use cloud computing. Like if you are not into that domain, you may say, okay, I don't use cloud computing, but if you are using Google Drive and things, you are already using cloud computing, meaning that you are being part of it even unknowingly. So that will be the case for AI as well, and also for IoT.
Where would you like to see the internet? What would be an ideal world for you?
Okay, everyone being accountable for their action, because it's like the law of like saying like the societal rules, not just for technology, even for you in your family. If you are not accountable, uh, then people can say, but if you want to go wrong and do all those bad things, no one can stop you from doing that, right? So that will be always there. I think no matter how we progress, that kind of things, I believe, will always be there. I don't think there will be all good peoples. Otherwise, we would not have require any prisons. There will always be bad peoples, and then they will misuse the technology. But then there will be majority of the people who wants to do the good things, and there are majority of the people like now in the world. So ideal world where good things, uh, there's more good than bad. That's what I say. I don't see the world with complete good. That's not going to happen, at least in my view.
Okay. Just to the audience, we're open to comments,
Mhm.
questions, any concerns you might have. Um, we still have 15 minutes on the clock, so we're happy to answer anything you might have pending on your mind. Um, yeah, so there's regulations that are being implemented in the European Union,
Mhm.
Europe at large, and they're still in their formative phase, but they seem very reasonable.
Mhm.
You want to talk a little bit about what they are and how you
Yeah,
think
and
they're gonna
yeah,
impact?
like for now, they are even regulating how you develop your AI models. I think that's a reasonable, because I think the full text is not available yet to read, but they have some categorization like on the level of risk. If you are doing, for example, biometric analysis, then you need to consider all those risks and also the models that you have developed. I see it from the positive perspective, but also if we do over regulation, I think that would be bad, because if I as a scientist cannot test all those corner cases or the misuse where it can happen, then I cannot develop model like and test all those edge cases that may occur when I deploy. So to be able to do to be able to develop like safe things, I need to first test in my lab all those unsafe scenarios, right? I think that should uh, we should when regulating things, we should also think from that perspective. I believe that's been done. And there was one of the recent study from Neural IPS from my previous university where they tested, I think, some simple classification, if I'm not mistaken, some AI models and some tasks on different devices. Like when I say different devices, like different hardware devices, and they found the depending on what hardware you run your algorithms, it was giving different output. You see, so there are. Why am I bringing this point to convey that it's not just limited to model development, but also the hardware will impact. Why that impact? Because depending on what hardware you are using, they have different architecture, and with the different architecture, you have different calculation. For example, the floating point calculation, the rounding, how it's being done, and those kinds of things will also impact your outcome and result. And if you don't pay attention, like that's why like research is there. So those findings are already helpful. So it's good to think of different cases, and not just from the model perspective, but also from the bigger perspective in other directions, so that it will be helpful.
I don't want to get bullied by academics for something I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyways, and I hope you don't dislike me after I say it. But when I initially started looking at research papers and things like that, I would think to myself, like, why would you spend months to benchmark and audit different frameworks for things or run experiments on things like that? Um, why are people spending time and energy doing that when they could be researching or implementing new technologies and bringing some use to society? But it's for the reason that you're saying that
Yes.
there's all these variances
Mhm.
and physical limitations and mechanical failures that we need to go and kind of inspect before conclusively going and saying this is true.
Yeah.
And that, like, the more I learn about the value and impact that research has in industry and in the world, the more appreciative I am of
Mm.
that. So just saying, before I didn't understand, now I appreciate it more. Um, so you're gonna be working in a different lab pretty soon. Do you
Mhm.
want to talk a little bit more about your upcoming research?
Uh, Upcoming, I think I not for now. Let's keep it on hold.
Let's add
So
mystery. Okay.
yeah, mystery.
Okay.
Mhm.
What about knowledge graphs? I mean, we brushed upon that for a
Yes.
little bit, and I don't think we've done justice to paint the whole picture as to what it
Mhm.
is. It's kind of, now that I've been saying it in
Mhm.
public, random people on the street, I've encountered a lot of resistance around what it means because it's not defined in common vocabulary. But can we boil that down a little bit and talk about that?
Yeah, knowledge graph in a simple terms, I see you see all those graph, right? When anybody who just do the like is doing, if you do Google search, it shows you the graph of some person linked to other person, and there's some edge connecting. That's a knowledge graph, I'd say. But then, uh, what is the value of that thing? The value of the knowledge graph is like you can define how two things are, yeah, the graph. But then there, how two things are interrelated, you can define. For example, if you say take Raz, then some university name, studied at, that means I studied at that university. Now, having like being able to define all those heterogeneous relationship, you can take advantage of it later. And then you all, what you are defining is all those semantics. You have I don't want to go into the technical part, all this URI and things. You have to trust me on this. So you can define all the semantics and take benefit of that thing. Why? Because having a things in a graph representation is always beneficial. If you see things in the world, you can already connect it with the graph. For example, the one of the best example is the social network. All those friends in your connection, like with how many hopes, like I think it was 5 or 6 hopes the world is connected by. I can take that information, I can propagate through different steps in graph and take, like, gather more intelligence from the surrounding. So when you do machine learning over graph, you take those information from the neighbor nodes, like, if you can show that graph again, could you
Oh,
show? Yeah. Yeah. For example, if I'm doing on the one node, I can take all those connected nodes, surrounding nodes information, and then have more richer information, and then use it for predictions and all kinds of things. And how is it? How does it help in IoT case? There's a ontology, the other component of the semantic web, not just knowledge graph. So that can help you design all those formal vocabulary, very rigorous, uh, bounded by logic. You can define all those logical constraints and then enforce things that should happen. For example, in one of the research that I did, we showed like how we can use ontologies and knowledge graph to ensure data quality. That's still in review. It will be out sometime, and you'll you can read that paper. But yeah, that's how you can use the knowledge graph, and it's being used by Google to enhance their search. Amazon, also Facebook, they have their own knowledge graph. You
I
can
think
think it of as a knowledge base kind of thing.
I think you mentioned a couple really helpful sub definitions. I
Mhm.
think you mentioned heterogeneous.
Yes,
So
heterogeneous. Yeah.
coming from varying
Mhm.
sources, coming from
Yeah.
different sources. So we can talk
And
about your
in
school.
IoT, it helps to integrate all those diverse data coming from all those different sources. So you can combine it, have a big graph of data, and then use all those for whatever analytics you want to do, if you want to do.
A simplified example of that could be if you're in a Tesla car and it's checking the speedometer, if it's
Mhm,
checking a sensor for how much gas is available in the tank, the temperature inside of the car, the temperature outside of the car, the battery capacity, those are
mhm,
different sensors and they compute and register different signals or
mhm.
data that shows like what's going on with that. But
Mhm.
then
And you can probably also take the surrounding information and you build the richer context, right? All those with the rich information that you have, and then you can always take advantage of those information.
without the gluing of these different sensors into one context,
Mhm,
into one ID or one application, you kind of have to wrestle with a lot of different sources and treat them individually and then clobber them together in a very brutish way as a software engineer, right?
mhm. Yeah.
You kind of need to find a way to harmonize these data points and then you can consume that in your application in your whatever software you're using.
Yeah, and that is where like now knowledge graph are being increasingly used by industries, and we are seeing more and more graph database emerging because of those kinds of advantages. So it has, because if you see the world the natural way, it's a graph. I mean, if you view it from that, it's not like tabular data, right?
Right.
Like you know me, I'm connected to you, you know someone and I may know them, we are connected, like that. And that's how we can view the knowledge graph as well as a graph of data.
Well, life is a series of events with
Yes.
actors, right?
Mhm.
And actions that actors take in that event. And that's the graph, right? One
Mhm.
thing affects another, or one
Yes.
thing is related to another, and they have a relationship between them. I ate an apple.
Yeah.
Apple gave me sustenance. Um, okay, well, we have 5 minutes left. Um, do you have any closing thoughts? Do you have anything that you'd like to share to empower the people to take control over their data?
Yes, I'd say don't share your data randomly because you may not know how they are going to use. Because once it's out there, it's out there. It's very hard to get it back in these times. So it's not, yeah, for the privacy thing and for the AI. I think it's not just the responsibility of the model developers. Of course, the majority of the responsibility lies on them to develop safe and secure AI models, but it's also on us, like the users, to use it responsibly because ChatGPT, it is there for us to help, right? It can help us in generating all those outlines and text. But if we are trying to generate the fake content and use it to like for the propaganda, I mean, that's our problem. So we should be responsible and not do things like that. So to make AI responsible, it's not just the developers but also the users' responsibility. And yeah, to make the world safer, it's not just the work of policemen or the law enforcement agencies. It's also the citizens. They have to act responsibly. So same applies with the technology. That's what I would want to say.
No, I appreciate that. We're
Mhm.
we're all collectively responsible for the world we want to live in.
Mhm.
If you see a piece of trash on the street, pick it up, right? If everybody says, "Oh, that's
Mhm.
bad," where are we going to go in as a society?
Yeah.
We're just going to be complainers and pointers. We're not going to take a proactive role in shaping how we want our world to be. Um, Great. Well, do you want to just tell us a little bit more about the book you're writing and when it's coming out, or when
Yeah.
you think
One of the book, it's with the publisher. I think I shared the information. They sent me confirmation of 150 copies they will be publishing in the first instance. So that book, one part of that book is
it's
exactly
exactly
about data privacy, particularly GDPR, how you can develop the technologies to support GDPR and help industries. The part of the work that was done in that book is already being at least I got the intent from the in one of the industrial partner. They will commercialize that. The work is open source, so it's already beneficial, and it also made an impact on the OECD accountability in AI accountability policy document. So that work you'd get a chance to read in that book on the data privacy, and also how knowledge graph can be used to uh, address data quality challenge uh, in a way that is like privacy compliant, GDPR compliant. That's part of the privacy. And the second part focuses more on machine learning and how you can use knowledge graph to build, to combine with other deep learning technologies. Uh, One use case focuses on agriculture and is about explainable AI other than making the prediction robust. Second one, the other two examples are the use cases are about predictive maintenance, uh, how you can build predictive systems that are more robust, take all those data points and have a richer information that you can have more context information, and then address all those predictive maintenance issues that you may have. And some of the very nice lessons learned working with those research problems with the real world industrial partners that you get to learn in that book.
who should reach out to you and for what?
Okay, that book, I think once it is out, you can buy it from the publisher side, which would be Springer Nature. So they will be publishing that book. But if you have any questions about the work that I'm doing, if you would like to know more, you can always reach out to me via LinkedIn or via email. You can find my email address on my website, which is tekrajchetri.com. My full name, just .com. Yeah. And if you want to know more about Care Nepal, you can visit Care Nepal, exact the name that you can see on the below my name and .org. Then you can know what kind of work we are doing in Care Nepal.
And if you'd want to just uh, connect with Tech Raj,
Mhm.
you can find him on LinkedIn. He should be in the event details. Thank you all for joining, and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.